Hey there, it's Orphe Divounguy, the co-host of the Everyday Economics podcast. Exciting news! Check out my new weekly column at thecentersquare.com. Join me as I break down complex economic trends in a way that's easy to understand for everyone. Check out the column every week and stay informed about the economic forces shaping our world. Be sure to subscribe to the Everyday Economics podcast and visit thecentersquare.com today.
Welcome to Everyday Economics, the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, CEO of the 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics is a production of America's Talking Network. You can subscribe to all of our podcasts at americastalking.com. To support Everyday Economics, please make a tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We're recording this episode on Monday, June 24th. And joining me, as always, my partner and friend, Dr. Orphe Divounguy, PhD economist. Dr. O, the, not to say long-awaited debate between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump is Thursday night. That's the 27th of June. We're taping this show, as I said, on the 24th of June. I think what this opportunity presents to us, would be, a nonpartisan conversation about what we think is going to be discussed at the debate, not around immigration, which I'm sure is going to take a significant portion of the conversation, and not about public safety, which I also believe will be an issue that will be discussed on Thursday night, but, inflation and the economy. And what I thought that we could do in sort of a very generic way is talk about the contrasts between the economic policies of the two candidates. So let me start with the challenger. Over the 4 years of Donald Trump's first term, his hallmarks were very specifically tax cuts and deregulation, limiting or ending rules that got in the way of generically commerce. President Biden, during his 3.5 years of tenure, has gone in a somewhat different direction. He has been very, very focused on certainly climate related issues. He's been involved in an investment in infrastructure as part of the Build Back Better plan. He has worked on the expansion of affordable health care, which some people refer to in this country as the Obamacare plan. And he's also, I'm just pulling directly from his platform, trying to bring down costs and strengthen the middle class. The success of either president in what they have done, and each one of them has had roughly the same amount of quote unquote time in market, really not for us to debate here. But I thought it would be interesting to go into the debate with maybe a little bit of pre-fight prognostication on our part on what we think the candidates are going to have to say. How do you think that Donald Trump is going to present his positions on the economy on Thursday night?
So, the incumbent always says, look, the economy is doing great. And then the newcomer, which is going to be former President Trump, is going to say the economy is in the toilet. And I think both of them are completely wrong. There's going to be these two extremes. So a couple of things. First of all, the economy is doing good. It's not doing great. It's doing good. And I say that because inflation is still, if you measure it by the PCE, it's about 2.8% year over year, core PCE, a little bit lower for headline PCE. So inflation's been, has stayed high for longer than previously anticipated. The cost of debt has risen, and debt service payments are much higher. Now, the higher for longer interest rate environment means the job market is cooling and could be cooling further. And we'll see that in the University of Michigan Consumer Confidence Index at the end of this week. It's likely to show consumer sentiments falling. You see the demand for housing has eased because, mortgage rates have remained high, much higher than most people had anticipated. And so very few Americans that don't already own a home and those who don't have access to the bank of mom and dad to help them with down payment cannot go out and buy a home today. It's very difficult. According to my data, 1 in 7 families that don't own could afford to go out and buy today. So could afford a mortgage payment today. So all of these things are affecting our way of life. And so it's weighing on people and consumer sentiment. So that's the bad part. But ultimately, the good part is people have jobs. We've had the best labor market in decades. People have jobs. The unemployment rate is 3.8%, fell down to 3.6% at some point. It's now back up to 4%, but ultimately people have jobs. And the increase in the unemployment rate, at least recently, hasn't been because of layoffs. It's been mostly because of an increase in labor supply, right? The share of Americans who work has increased close to the highest in over 20 years. So, I mean, you see the nuances, right? I think it's important to pay attention to the details. And so the candidates out there will probably exaggerate on either side of things. And to some extent, I think that's a disservice to American people. I think people deserve to know what's really going on. People deserve for their candidates to pay attention to what's actually happening and what's troubling them. And people deserve a president who will set a course for the future that's going to have Americans in mind, Americans first in mind. And when I say that, I don't mean a populist agenda. What I mean is, what can we do about our rising entitlement spending? What can we do about, by the way, rising entitlements competing with our falling infrastructure, right? There's a lot that needs to be done that should be done. What can we do about the fact that housing supply, that there's a massive housing deficit across the country, and that unfortunately supply lags in the most productive areas of the country, and that we need to build more homes? What can we do about that? What can we do about building more affordable housing, right? What can we do about incentivizing states and localities to change their zoning and land use regulations in order to permit more housing being built in those areas? What can we do about that, right? So those are serious issues that people care about, that affect their lives on a daily basis. And what can we do about the fact that there are banking deserts in communities of color across the country, right? What can we do about that? So those are the things that I think people will care about, really care about, but they probably won't hear a ton of in those, in those debates. Sadly, I hope they will. I don't know. I hope they will.
I agree with you. And I think that, it's like, again, as I don't have a crystal ball, but as I look forward to Thursday night, I don't know that either candidate will be able to contain himself to mapping out, a plan. And I think that this debate, even with the format, as structured, where when your time is up, your microphone is turned off. There's also, I believe, no audience in the room. That this is kind of almost like the 1960 Kennedy-Nixon debate, which was taped in the CBS 2 Chicago former studio here in Chicago. I don't know that we're going to get a whole lot of mapped out detail on future economic policies or plans. I feel that we're probably going to hear from President Biden that the things that he is doing are working. And I think we're going to hear from President Trump that, the things that he did prior to the pandemic were working and ultimately were undone by the pandemic itself. So, I thought it would be just kind of interesting to try to isolate this as subject matter for the people who are going to watch on Thursday night. But let's bring this to an end. I appreciate the time as always. For Dr. Orphe Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics and dozens of other quality podcasts at americastalking.com.
Hey there, it's Orphe Divounguy, the co-host of the Everyday Economics podcast. Exciting news! Check out my new weekly column at thecentersquare.com. Join me as I break down complex economic trends in a way that's easy to understand for everyone. Check out the column every week and stay informed about the economic forces shaping our world. Be sure to subscribe to the Everyday Economics podcast and visit thecentersquare.com today.